So it's really important to rotate crops, both for the nutrient problem as well as for pest issues. There are certain crops that certain pests like to attack certain plants. So by moving crops around, you break the reproductive cycles of certain plants. So, for instance, the potatoes that we have in one field will be 100 yards away. The potato beetles who like to eat the potatoes have to walk. They don't have wings in the spring, so they're going to have to walk all the way from that one spot all the way to the next year. And hopefully in the process they'll get eaten by a predator. They won't find it. So that's another reason why we don't plant this spot every year. And then composting is another big tool for organic farmers, because composting is what's happening in the soil when you till in cover crops, but it's just the breaking down of organic materials by microorganisms. So it's just rotting organic matter. So you take a bunch of vegetables, maybe some straw, whatever materials you have, and you put them in a pile, and there are all these bacteria and fungus that are already sort of living in the environment that attack that organic matter and eat it, break it down, keep it out, that can be eaten by other organisms. It just turns into this big pile of bacteria food we call compost. And it's a more stable form of organic matter that we can add to the soil. And oftentimes it's very rich in fertility, so we can use it as a source of nutrients for our plants as well. It also is very rich in organic matter, so it helps to improve the structure of the soil. The structure of the soil is really important as well. Like I talked about earlier, plants need not just nutrients, but they need air and water. So if you have really clayey soil that's really hard, it's going to be hard for roots to grow down. It's going to be hard for water to trickle down and for air to move down there as well. It'd be like growing a plant in a pathway. It would be a lot more difficult than fluffy, nice organic soil. Compost is also nice for making compost tea. Compost tea is just sort of, you take compost and let it ferment in some water, and it's you can use it to spray on your plants, and what you're doing is basically colonizing the leaves of your plants with bacteria, and the bacteria then is living on the leaves of the plants. It's a beneficial bacteria. Because that bacteria is already there, any pathogen that comes onto the plant, maybe it's a blight of like a little spore of blight that comes and lands on the leaf, isn't going to be able to really take hold there because there's already so much competition, because there's such vibrant life on the leaf already that it won't be able to take hold of the plant. So cover cropping, crop rotation, and composting are really the three ways that we focus on enhancing soil health. Those are some other things that we can do on our farm to create a really healthy ecosystem. Building biodiversity is a big key to that. So you can imagine if we were just growing one crop, just two crops in the monoculture, or just two crops, that if we had a pest issue, it could become a real problem really, really quickly. All we were growing was soybeans. We had bean beetles came onto the farm and just started mowing. It'd be really rough to try to curb that spread because it's just all soybeans. If we build biodiversity by planting many different kinds of crops, we're going to be attracting all kinds of different insects to the farm. So we grow about 70 different kinds of vegetables on our farm. Many different species of plants, and they're attracting all sorts of different pathogens and insects to the farm. We're also doing things like keeping natural refuges, like letting grass grow tall on its own, growing close to the woods, to encourage native predatory insects to live in our farm as well. So the wasps and the hornets, as well as other animals like snakes, frogs, help to benefit that ecosystem as well by taking that most insect. That said, we do have to react to pests occasionally. So this has all been an explanation of how we build an ecosystem that's vibrant and able to deal with insects and pest pressure. But occasionally we do have pest problems. So a population of a certain insect or disease that really explodes to the point where we have to intervene and do something about it. There are ways for us to act proactively to prevent that from happening beyond just building, like using compost tea. So if we realize that maybe it's a bad time of year for the blight, if it's a cool and wet year, it's a good time for fungus to be growing in our plant, and we would be putting down a lot of compost tea, which definitely does help preventing those blight infestations. But occasionally we do have to react. We have an infestation of cabbage birds or tomato hornworms or Colorado mosquito beetles or something like that. There are myriad different pests on a farm, myriad different insects that like crops. So we're always working proactively to create an integrated approach to dealing with these things. So probably the most common way that we react to pest pressure is through excluding pests. So with our baby eggplants and with our baby cucumbers, we cover them with this stuff called remade. We call it agribond. It's brand names. But it's basically a really thin, woven white fabric that we use to exclude those insects when the plant is young and then after a while, when the plant is strong enough, we take it off and it itself. But we also can use products. We can use pesticides to deal with those insects as well. And organic farmers do use pesticides. This is a big, interesting thing in marketing. There's sort of this idea that organic farmers don't use pesticides. I get the question all the time at the farmers market: do you use pesticides? Do you spray? And when I say yes, but they're already walking away because they don't want to hear that I'm using pesticides. One pesticide that I would use is soap. So when the aphids get out of control on the transplants when they're little, I can use a diluted soap solution to kill the aphids. I can also use things like BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that grows. It's a bacteria that we can spray on our brassicas and our broccoli and cabbages and things like that to help deal with cabbage peppers. There are all kinds of products like this that are safe to use because they're not toxic, that are organically allowable. And the responsible organic farmer will not just look at whether or not they're preventing pest problems on the farm, but also whether or not they're impacting the native species or the ecosystem that they're growing, and that they're also communicating their practices to their customers. And their customers can stay informed and agree. And it's important for people to understand those things. Otherwise, they're going to misunderstand questions that they're asking. For example, do you have pesticides? Do you use pesticides? So there are all kinds of other practices that farmers use, and you all are going to be asking a lot of questions about them. It's going to be difficult for me to go through and talk about every single one of them, but right now we can expect to take some questions about what practices you in particular want to hear about. So go ahead and type them in.